I've kicked off the recording. You'll see that message pop up. We are recording this session because it will be made available as soon as the recording is finished. I will put in the chat towards the end of the presentation a link to complete your attendance quiz. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat.
Hey, Wandy, 3 o'clock. You can go ahead and kick it off whenever you're ready, bud.
Right, thank you. Good afternoon, good evening. It's in Canada, Ontario. Right now it's at 3 p.m. My name is Wendy. I'm a health and safety supervisor for the Port Hope Initiative project, one of the project sites, South Ravine. And just to give you my background, I joined ECC almost like 10 or 9 months ago. I came from a construction and mining background, and I work in a different emergency response and preparedness projects before I joined the health and safety sector. And yeah, I work in one of the largest mining site, gold mining site in Canada, up north, almost 1,000 kilometers from Toronto. And yeah, currently, like I said, I'm managing the health and safety project activities in Port Hope Initiative and both Highland Drive and South Ravine. And yeah, so today I wanted to just to cover a topic of confined space work entry training. And do you guys see my slide?
Yeah, you're good. If you want to throw it in presentation mode, that'd probably be pretty good too, Wandy.
Yeah, perfect. So I wanted to just like the main objective of this training is to make sure that we revisit the requirements on confined space work entry requirements, and just to brainstorm what the definition, the difference between the non-permit required or permit required confined space and were associated a hazard, a potential hazard working on confined space, especially for the permit required one, and what are the industrial best practice and control measures that we have to consider during hazard control measures, as well as what's the role and responsibility of the employers, as well as the workers on managing confined space work. So for this, I have like a couple of slides and and 3 videos that I'm going to use in between slides. And if you have any question, please just throw it in chat and I will entertain. Or if you have any question that you wanted to, question at the end of the presentation, you can raise also. And if there's anything that I have to visit or discuss more, you can also just speak and I'll do that. Just to start my presentation, I would like to share with you one video, like it's just around 10 minutes video that will give us a good understanding the reason why the permit is required to hazardous confined space work environments. Can you see the video?
We do not.
Okay. In a second, and I'll share it again.
And just be sure when you share to share sound as well.
Yeah, I will. Can you see on the screen, the video screen?
Yes, I can see the video. Perfect.
Confined spaces can come in a variety of shapes and sizes, but the hazards are all similar.
Normally, outside air contains about 21% oxygen and is necessary to sustain life. Some confined spaces contain 21% oxygen, others do not. Oxygen is invisible and may be used up over time in the confined spaces by things as simple as rust or bacterial growth in slime. Other gases may enter the confined space and displace the oxygen. Operations such as cutting with oxyacetylene or heating will consume oxygen. If the oxygen in the confined space is reduced to 12 to 16%, workers will experience increased pulse and respiration, impaired judgment, and loss of coordination. If the oxygen level is at 6 to 10% or less when the workers enter a confined space, they will experience nausea, vomiting, or loss of consciousness followed by death. Oxygen deficiency is particularly dangerous because it can cause drowsiness or euphoria, which prevents the worker from realizing the danger in time to escape.
We're on the scene of a tragic accident where just about an hour ago, 2 workers were found dead in this sewer. The deaths have been attributed to carbon monoxide poisoning, and officials have indicated that it's possible that the workers didn't follow standard gas testing procedures.
When we arrived at the scene, we found the 2 victims collapsed in the tunnel. My crew went in with full respiration gear, pulled the men out, and tried to resuscitate them, but it was just too late. When we checked for carbon monoxide, it was 4 times safe levels. God only knows what it was when they went in there. No, I don't know why accidents like this happen, but I suspect that the workers just didn't follow proper testing procedures.
Right on. Can you see now, right? My slide back. Sally, let me know if you can see the slide.
Yes.
All right. So, like I said, the reason why we have to follow the right safe work practice, best waste practice, and also safe procedure is because of the potential hazard and the nature of the work environment. The first one is the nature of ventilation. The natural ventilation will often not be sufficient for the workers that were working inside the confined space. And in the entrance or exit of the confined space may not allow the workers the lack of access egress, and also the if there's any accident or injuries on the confined space, self-rescue is very difficult. And even though we have a plan to manage confined space self-rescue procedures, they may be difficult, as well as if we use also like external or second party the rescue team, then that's also difficult. So that's why we need to have a proper planning on confined space and making sure that we follow. And the other one is the interior configuration of the confined space doesn't allow the easy movement of people or equipment within it, and the condition very quickly change. And other one is there will be also change in condition from inside to outside, or outside to inside. So that will affect the nature of the confined space. And the other one is the work activity that we introduce in the hazard that will not present initially, that will create hazard for the workers. And other one is the there will be like a breakage of communication between the workers outside or inside, or attendees or emergency rescue team. So that will make us difficult in case of emergency. That's why we have to have like good planning and follow the right procedure of the employer, the client. And just to see the stats, and I used the Copilot. That's the one of the advantage of the AI era to like to summarize the data. So from the US, the data, the 1,030 fatalities associated with the confined space in between year 2011 to 2019, and also similar to, like, for instance, like when you take one of the Canada province or state, there's 18 days associated with confined space for the last 15 years. And when you say confined space, it's clearly defined in the regulation, like in the 29 CFR 1926 part AA, or confined space in construction, as well as for Canadian regulation on confined space. We have a specific confined space regulation, and when you say confined space, is a large has three criteria, like to categorize confined space is a large enough and then so configured that employee can bodily enter, or is limited or restricted means of for entry and exits, and also is not designated for continuous employee or workers occupancy. So this is the definition of confined space. And there are also like the detailed classification of confined space. The first one is the permit required, and the other one is non-permit required. For permit required confined space is all the criteria that we mentioned, confined space, plus the following additional criteria or characteristics, like contain or has a potential to contain hazardous atmospheres, or contain material that has potential for engulf an entrant, or has an internal configuration such as the entrant could be trapped or asphyxiated by inwardly converging wall, or collapse, or cave in. So if it has like confined space have that kind of characteristic, then we classify it as permit required confined space, as well as the content that's recognized serious health safety hazards. So if you have this 4 and other hazards that will potentially affect the workers or the entrant, then we classify as permit required confined space. And for permit confined space, and mean the confined space that meets the definition of the confined space, but doesn't require have the requirement permit required, which means there's no potential hazards associated with the work. And when we classify the confined space, we always have to make sure that it's a continuous process. As you know, the construction site, we may downgrade for the permit required confined space to non-permit required confined space, or if the condition changed on confined space, we may categorize the non-permit required confined space to upgrade to permit required. Then we have to initiate or activate the procedure that we have in our company. And why in the regulation for both in state and Canada, it's clearly mentioned that if we have in particular projects, if we have a work that's performed in confined space with the potential hazard, should have a written program for that particular project. That's why we have seen, like, in different ECC health and ECC projects, having the HASP or the accident preparedness or plan, including the confined space if the activities has confined space work. And when you see the written programs, and they clearly have to mention the description of the role and responsibility of the workers, like the companies, what's the expected, the duty of the employer, as well as the specific workers that engage in confined space, for instance, supervisors, workers, attendees, and emergency response. So we'll come in detail. And also the program clearly mentioned, should clearly mention the advice on how to identify confined space and how to classify the confined space and how to assess the potential hazard and what are the control mechanisms and also the clear procedure to conduct atmospheric testing and monitoring as required. And also the program also should include also a plan to eliminate the control identified hazard and also should have also the safe work procedure or work procedure, written work procedure. When you see our corporate, we have confined space safe operating procedure or SOP 0101. You can refer that. And there are also like related template and forms that we have to use. And the program also should mention also the trainings, like what kind of trainings and to whom, and is it internal, external, how often the training should be renewed, and also the process to give the permit and what's the permit system process looks like, and also the emergency response system that we have in our project site if we are going to use the self-rescue or external third-party emergency rescue team. So they have to clearly mention on the program, and also like what's the procedure and the step that we have to follow if there is any near miss or any unexpected event on the confined space force, then how to conduct the thorough investigation on those confined space work area, and also have to also clearly mention the record and documentation, the document keeping and record keeping on that specific projects or program. And also the program should also clearly mention or written like state that how often the program should be reviewed and how we have to make sure that that's documented also throughout the process of program review. And when we come to the entry permit process, and as you know, like we have different the potential like hazard, like very risky activities we require to have by regulation, by law, need to have a permit. For instance, like one of the example is other than confined space with hot work permits or critical lifting. Likewise, for confined space, we need to have also a permit, as written the document that will be provided for the workers or for supervisors and for attendees and rescuers, to make sure that we followed and we capture all the hazard control mechanisms on that project activity, and also this administrative tools that we have to show our due diligence, and also to make sure that we documented the hazard control and continuous control, as well as the record of the work that we are doing. And also this permit also they should be like the issued or fully issued by fully trained and experienced worker or competent person in confined space work, and had the appropriate training to issue the permit. And when we come to the hazards assessment, like we do like in our in each project activities, before we start or launch or kick off the project, we thoroughly investigate or assess the project hazard, and we have to go through also during that process, we have to go through also the hazard assessment for confined space if we have a confined space work in the project scope. So we have to go through the air quality, and if the air quality will affect the worker, then based on this hazard assessment, we will classify the confined space that we have in our work area, project area, from the permit required to non-permit required if there's no potential or if there's not doesn't have characteristics that we mentioned. And like I mentioned, or like to see like on the video, the main potential hazard or hazard that we expect in confined space is the poor air quality, the insufficient amount of oxygen and toxic gases that's generated. That includes hydrogen sulfide and carbon monoxide, and also different gas that will limit the amount of oxygen in the confined space or displace the oxygen in the air in the confined space work area. And when it comes to the amount of oxygen in confined space, there's a two threshold. Like the first one, the low oxygen levels, which is below 19.5% or less, can cause symptoms such as the rapid breathing, rapid heart rate, and clumsy and emotional upset and fatigue. So based on the amount of the percentage of oxygen that we have in confined space, the sign and symptom and the effect also different. So you can also refer on different materials resource that we have in our ECONET. So if you visit the confined space SOP, it's clearly mentioned that. And when you come to the other hazards, like the chemical exposure, also one of the hazards due to the skin contact or ingestion, as well as the inhalation of toxic gases in the confined space, also one of the potential hazard. And the other one is the fire hazard in explosive or flammable atmosphere due to the flammable liquid and gas and combustible dust, which if ignited will lead to fire or explosion. Particularly like if you have activity that's, for instance, like related with hot work permit, like activities permit that require permits, that will increase the fire hazard or potential for explosion and fire. So that's why we have to do a thorough fire hazard assessment. Other one is process related hazards such as residual chemicals or release of content of a supply line. For instance, if that confined space has like the line for like wastewater or a chemical, then that will also create also additional hazard. And the other one is the physical hazards like noise, heat, cold, radiation, vibration, and electrical and inadequate lighting. Also, some of the hazard that we may encounter working on confined space. And the other one is safety hazards, like such as moving part of equipment. If you are working in confined space, that allow us to mobilize the equipments or tools. And for instance, the other one, the structural hazard and engulfment and entanglement, slip or falls inside the confined space. And the vehicular and pedestrian traffic, particularly if our operation or project site is, like sharing. For instance, when in our Port Hope initiative, we are currently like designing to engage on the small scale remediation projects. So if we going to involve on that, there may be like a lot of activities that we required us to work on confined space nearby pedestrian or vehicular movements. And other one is shifting or collapse of bulk materials or engulfment inside the confined space, or barrier failure that result in the flood or release of free flowing solid or liquid. And like I mentioned, visibility also one of the issue. And also if there's any virus or bacteria or biological hazard that will also add up with the on the existing hazards of physical or air quality hazards. Just to cover the hazard identification and control, I have also one video just to play. Let me know if you see that, or if you don't, then can you see the video? No, right?
No, I don't see the video.
Yeah, so I have to stop sharing and I'll share again. Can you see now the video?
Yep, perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
Construction workers sometimes perform work in confined space, work areas that are enclosed and have a restricted means of entry or exit that may present dangerous and hazardous conditions not found in other normal work areas. A confined space is any space that is 1. Large enough for a worker to enter, 2. is difficult to exit in the event of an emergency, and 3. not designed to be continuously occupied by workers. Some examples of confined spaces found in residential construction may include manholes, sewer systems, storm drains, precast concrete manhole units, transformer vaults, tanks, pits, crawl spaces, and attics. A space may also be a permit-required confined space, or permit space, if it has one or more of the following hazardous conditions: contains a hazardous atmosphere, contains material that has potential to engulf or suffocate a worker, has a layout that might trap a worker through converging walls or a sloped floor, or has any other serious safety or health hazard. Workers operating in confined spaces can face life-threatening hazards, including atmospheres where there is insufficient oxygen caused by displacement of air by another gas, hazardous levels of toxic gases and vapors such as carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, or smoke, flammable and explosive atmospheres which can arise from the presence of flammable liquids or gases in a confined space, mechanical, electrical, or physical hazards such as moving mechanical parts, electrical shock, or excessive heat, flowing liquid that can flow into the confined space causing drowning, suffocation, or other injury, extreme heat that may impede a worker from exiting the space without assistance due to heat stress. Because confined spaces can present very hazardous conditions, steps must be taken to protect workers if they work in permit-required confined spaces. Before any worker can enter a confined space, pre-entry planning must be conducted, including having a competent person identify any confined space on the job site and determine whether these spaces are permit-required confined spaces. If the job site contains a permit-required space, any worker that must enter that space must be protected from potential hazards in the permit space. Keep in mind that construction work can create confined spaces, even if there are none at the start of a project. To effectively control hazards associated with confined spaces, a confined space program must be developed and followed. The program should identify precautions to be taken to protect the workers in the permit space, how workers will be trained to perform their duties safely, and the methods used to isolate and control hazards, and how injured workers will be promptly and safely rescued from the confined space. The Permit Space program also establishes the system for preparing, using, and canceling entry permits, which are written documents that allow and control entry into permit spaces, and are issued by employers who have workers entering these confined spaces. After confined spaces on the job site have been identified, workers must understand their existence, location, and the dangers posed by permit-required spaces, and that they cannot enter these spaces without authorization. Workers involved in entering permit-required confined space must also understand the potential hazards in these spaces and the methods used to isolate and control hazards so they can perform their duties safely. There are 3 categories of workers that have specific duties whenever work is performed in a permit-required confined space. Authorized entrants, who are workers allowed to enter a permit space. Attendants, who are workers stationed outside the permit space, charged with monitoring conditions within the space and preventing unauthorized entry. And entry supervisors, who are responsible for overseeing entry operations. Before workers can enter a confined space, employers must provide pre-entry planning. This includes identifying the means of entry and exit and proper ventilation methods in the space. Ensuring that the air in a confined space is tested before workers enter for oxygen levels, flammable and toxic substances, and stratified atmospheres. Effective communication is important because there can be multiple contractors operating on a site, each with its own workers needing to enter the confined space. An attendant should be stationed outside the confined space to monitor personnel entering. Unauthorized workers cannot enter a confined space. Rescue attempts by untrained personnel can lead to multiple deaths. Employers should assess the work site to determine what personal protective equipment, or PPE, is needed to protect workers. Employers should provide workers with the required PPE and proper training on its use, and inform them about any related hazards before the work starts. It's also important to have a pre-planned rescue strategy in case of a confined space emergency. The confined space program must include procedures for entrants to be rescued in a timely manner by qualified personnel. An estimated 60% of fatal accidents are untrained workers attempting the rescue of another worker. If calling 911 is your rescue plan, be aware that not all rescue services or emergency responders are trained and equipped to conduct confined space rescues. Emergency responders should have adequate equipment for rescues, such as atmospheric monitors, fall protection, extraction equipment, and self-contained breathing apparatus for the particular permit-required confined space. The rescue plan should include access strategies for ingress and egress, a project site plan, and GPS coordinates if in a remote location. Failure to understand the hazards of confined spaces can lead to death or serious injury. Unless you are trained in confined space hazards and the precautions to eliminate them, you should never enter a confined space.
Right. Going back to our slide. Can you see the slide?
Yes, I sure can.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Wandy, we have a question in the chat. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if you have access to that or if you just want to save those till the end.
Yeah, I can. If you don't mind, I will. Yeah, we'll entertain on after the presentation.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Perfect.
Dave, is that okay, Dave?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. So to control the hazards on confined space, I just classify the confined space, the hazard control activities or measures into three. The first one, the before entering the and prepare. That's like I mentioned, like we have to have we have to make sure that we review our safe operating procedures and we thoroughly assess the hazards associated with confined space before we start the work and include it in our the IWC package or job hazard analysis. So making sure that what the controls are, and as you know, like always follow the hierarchy of control, and we always emphasize on using the engineering controls, eliminating the confined space where the possible. The one thing that I can share with you with the Port Hope Initiative project here in Canada is we have one confined space area in that we call it the PRB chamber, that we have like different compartments, and we have to let worker enter to the confined that area and just to install different pipes and fittings. So what we did was like just to avoid working on the confined space, then to take more time on doing the task, we assemble the parts and the pipes outside and reduce the time that we spend in confined space. Such kind of creativity will help us to avoid time or eliminate the working in confined space. And the other one is installing the ventilation systems, applying physical isolation or ensure the fixed access and atmospheric monitoring. That's engineering control. The other one is like as you heard, like on the video, administrative control conducts hazard assessment, issues entry permits. That we have to make sure that as health and safety, we have to make sure that the permit issuing process completed and reviewed with the workers, and job hazard analysis completed and reviewed with the workers, and verify if there's any activities inside confined space. For instance, that we have to put to make sure that the xeno energy is in place, like making sure that the LOTO procedures followed, or if there's any hot work activities, making sure that hot work permit issues, and also the planning, the rescue, and different, like including the training, that we have to make sure that the workers who are going to engage in confined space are trained prior to doing the confined space tasks. And other one is PP, and making sure that we we supplied and included in our supply of the health and safety items or equipment to the site, including the respirators protection, the harness, and making sure that the respirators are as per the standard. And if we have to use the different rescue equipment or different items, that we have to make sure that we properly inspected and make sure that we had as per the spec. And the other one is making sure that if you are applying different kind of the gas monitoring equipments, and making sure that the workers, they understand how to operate, and giving them proper training, and also demonstrating how to use the properly the gas monitors and such kind of things we have to do in prior to going to the confined space or doing the confined space work. During entry or to control the monitor the work area, again, we have to apply also engineering controls like maintaining continuous ventilation. If you're required to have the ventilation system, then performing ongoing atmospheric monitoring, ensure safe lighting if there's any visibility issue, and also making sure that there is a continuous communication between the workers inside and attendees or supervisors. And the best practice that I can mention also here in the Port Hope initiative is like we assigned a specific radio channel, like only because it was a special task and project. So we assigned, for instance, like channel 4 for confined space team or crew. So just to make sure that like the communication not interrupted between the supervisors and workers. And the other ones making sure that ensure that attendees and present as administrative control and supervisor oversight and permit compliance, effective communication, and if there's any change in the inside the confined space, then you have to also empower, also remind workers to stop work, to give them stop work authority, and you have to also use that strategy during the confined space work. And in terms of PP, proper and continuous use of respirators, and every time, like if they are going out from the confined space for break and for the lunch or for any specific activity, then we have to make sure that they stored properly and as per the standard or procedure. And we have to make sure also we continuously check the air monitors and communicate with the team. After the entry, the other control mechanism is we have to make sure that we secure the confined space. For instance, like the task, if not completed the same day, like then if you are postponing for the next day or going to finish the next day, then we have to make sure that you secure the work area or the confined space, and we have to follow the regulation or the standard that we mentioned in our regulations. And administrative control account for all workers. We have to make sure that with if there are different workers internal confined space, we have to make sure that we count in the workers and close the permit for the day and document the readings, and making sure that if there's any near miss or incident, then we have to make sure that it's reported and investigated before we proceed for the next day. And sharing also the lesson learned from before enter the next day will be also a best practice. Also, we have to do it anyways. And the other one is the PP, and when before we leave the site or before we leave the confined space, we have to make sure that we inspect it and clean, store, and maintain the PP and other rescue equipment, like if we are using the tripod or any other rescue equipment, we have to make sure that we inspect it also if there's any damage or any issues. And when it comes to the health and safety program, like I mentioned, as ECC, we do have the confined space safe operating procedure and also associated template and forms that we have to use, including the air quality monitoring template. and also other permit forms like hot work or lotto forms. So we have to make sure that we are familiar with that, and also we have to make sure that also like our team, they're familiar with the APP or the HAS of the projects, and also activity specific the hazard assessment documents and hazard analysis documents in our project sites. And in terms of permit process, entry permit is required for, like I said, confined space, and hazard and risk assessment define that the major control risk involved with the following. Then when it comes to permit, we have to make sure that the atmospheric monitors and isolation, the lockout, and like I say, like if there's any activities, then we have to make sure that all the control measures are in place, and if other measures, then other procedures that we have to follow also we have to follow. For instance, like if it is hot work activity, then we have to follow hot work safe operating procedure for our company. The other one, before entering to confined space, our entry permit should be completed, and we have to make sure that we have to know the length of the time or permit is valid, and usually we go with the one permit per day, and we have to make sure also include also the name of the workers that are authorizing to enter the confined space, obviously supervisors, and the name of the attendees, and the intrant, and also if there's any rescue, also like a name of the rescue on site, and the location description of confined space, the scope of the work that we are going to do inside the confined space. We have to clearly mention the work and the potential hazard, as well as the control mechanisms also. And otherwise also we have to also mention also the date and time, and particularly with our templates also allow us like to mention also like the time that we measure the atmospheric the air quality inside the confined space. So whenever we are measuring the air quality, the atmospheric air, then inside the confined space, we have to also document the time. That will show us our due diligence, and also it's good record keeping. And also we have to make sure also means of communication between the persons and emergency plan also we have to review. And like I said, we had healing last year in 2025. Before we start the confined space activity, the first day what we did was we reviewed, we gathered all the workers that were trained and going to involve on confined space, and we reviewed our safe operating procedure, reviewed the confined space plan, and also the hazard and control mechanisms, and also the daily activities associated with confined space work. And when it comes to team, there should be one authorizer, confined space authorizer, which is the competent person in our most of our project site. The supervisors are who are issuing the permits, and attendees are the person stationed outside the permit space with assess the situation of the authorized entrant, and also not only the inside but also the outside. Also, if there is a change in outside environment, they will communicate also with the entrant. And also this person is only do one and only one specific task. This is like to make sure that he's communicating with the entrant, and if there's an issue, communicating also with the supervisors. He's not going to involve in any other task. For instance, like if there is a truck that need like the spotting, or while reversing, then you can call to the supervisor to send someone. So that's not like involving in any task. And like I said, entrant supervisors, they could qualify a person like employer, supervisor, or crew chief who is responsible to determining of the acceptable entry conditions, and making sure that the permit has like proper planning, proper hazard control measures in place. And also this is the person also who terminates the entry if there's any change inside the confined space. The other one is response personnel. Like I say, like there are different response mechanisms. I will cover on that, and there we have to also make sure that the response person is aware of our plan and also aware of our safe operating procedure in terms of emergency response. And as one qualified person is the one who, by possession of the recognition degree, certificate, or like mentioned in the regulation, have the training, the knowledge, and the experience, has successfully demonstrated the ability to solve or resolve the problem related to subject matter. So most of the time, in our case, it's the construction manager, so superintendent, or construction supervisors are the one. And when it comes to training, like I mentioned, our health and safety program should have also written program on training, on particularly on confined space. So during the training, we have to make sure that the workers are trained on the definition and how to recognize and identify potential hazards in confined space, and how we can classify confined space, and what are the hazard identification process, control mechanisms in confined space, and also duties and training for each required roles, like what's if I'm assigned as attendee, what's my responsibility? If I'm assigned as intern, what's my responsibility? So it should be like clearly communicated with the workers or the crew. And also our permit the issuing process, also they have to also train on that. So the other one is the how to measure also atmospheric testing and monitoring, and also how to communicate, and if there's a capacity like to train workers, we can also train them like on measuring the confined space, the instruments, like different instruments, and also different approach and method that we use on resetting the confined space instrument, or configuring the confined space instrument. And other ones, the PPE and the equipment setups, how to use the, like if we are going to respirators, then how to use the respirator, and they have to make sure that also we follow our respirator program, also including that like medical surveillance, or the test, medical test and fit test. All those stuff must be done before before engaging that confined space activities. And they have to also train also the emergency procedure rescue plan that we have, even though if they are not going to engage in response, then they have to know also what's the rescue procedure and action measure that we have for a specific confined space activity, and what's the requirement as health and safety program on terms of retraining or taking refresher training for this confined space. So that must be communicated when you are training our workers. And just to refer in the requirement for confined space the trainings, then you can refer also your the project specific document, HASP document, so that will give you a clear understanding if there's any confined space activity. And in terms of documentation, as you know, health and safety is like as the documentation is a very the critical task or activity that we have in health and safety program here in ECC. So we have to make sure that we document each and every documents or record that we have before we engage in confined space, during engaging confined space, after we complete also the confined space. It does include confined space hazard assessment, job hazard assessment, the confined space entry permits, and also the atmospheric testing records daily. We have to make sure that we keep the soft electronic copy as well as the physical copy also, gas detection equipment record, and isolation of energy control like the LOTOS, and also the ventilation plan if we have. So like I said, this most of the time, not most of the time, always this documentation requirement clearly stated in our health and safety plan for specific projects. And other one is the rescue emergency response documentation, workers training, the certification, and we have to make sure also review the training records also, and also the PP records also, and also the equipments and pre-entry, the toolbox documents record that we reviewed about confined space, actually communicated with the workers, the hazard, and also if there's any change in management, re-entry documentation, if you cancel the confined space for the day, like around noon, then if you are going to resume, then we have to make sure that also we issue the document and document the record, the document associated with this particular task. So always documentation document is very important. And the other one is the emergency rescue or emergency response. As you know, like the main purpose of the emergency rescue is like to make sure that the rescue activities fast and safe and effective, and also prevent secondary fatalities, particularly the rescues the team, and also protect the entrant and attendant and rescuers, and also that's required by law also to have. So we need to have also, like I mentioned, like training, documentation, hazard assessment, rescue plans also required. And when it comes to entry team rescue roles, like I mentioned, each worker, they have their own specific role and responsibility. So just to mention some, the authorized entrant, they recognize the emergency. If there's an emergency inside, they communicate with the attendees, and the attendee will communicate to supervisor, and the supervisor will follow the emergency rescue plan or initiate the rescue activity or measures. And attendees, the monitor condition on this one, like on the authorized entrant, if our plan has the self-rescue plan, the emergency response plan, then we have to also train, and we have to make sure that this self-rescue is safe to do. So by the attendant. So if not, then we have to make sure also have appropriate plan for that. And the other one is and monitor the hazard and initiate emergency response if there's any emergency inside the confined space. And the entry supervisors confirm the rescue readiness and authorize the rescue action, including initiating the rescue activities. And if you are going to rescue team, or we have to make sure that they are trained, equipped, and available at any time on site. And if you are going to use for instance, like if you are working in the cities or in municipal, then we have to make sure that also you communicate with ahead of time with the fire department if they are going to engage on rescue. So they have to know what kind of activity you have in your project. So it's good to communicate, and even it's also required to have also some exercise or drill exercise with the team. And rescue methods, like I mentioned, non-entry rescue methods. This done by the entrant. Then we using different equipment like tripod, devote arm or harness, or retrieval lines, or this will not allow the rescuers or other crew to involve, so that will reduce the avoiding any hazard. But we have to make sure that, like, if the self-rescue is not possible, then we have to initiate or activate the external rescue procedure. Then, like I mentioned, we have to train rescue team, and also we have to make sure that the team that's involved is trained and require the appropriate PPs, and we have to communicate also if there's the high risk, and we have to have a detailed and thorough plan and communication, and also strictly controlled also. And the rescue readiness, confined spaces specific rescue plan, then like I mentioned, we have to make sure that we are familiar with our rescue plan, and also make sure that we always check and test our plan through the drill or mock exercise. We have to make sure also like with the rescue equipment are inspected and staged and nearby like the confined space, and also our atmospheric monitoring equipments are in place and nearby the confined space, and the rescue team is trained and practice like I mentioned. Emergency contacts are posted. That's required by law, like to make sure that the emergency contact lists are nearby the confined space work, and also, like I mentioned, the policies, procedures, the safe work practice are reviewed with the team. That's what I have. I have one last video. I think we are short in time. Then you're going to have this slide. Then you can play this video. It's about the confined space and rescue readiness, and just in general, overall, the objective or the message of this video is to make sure that we communicated with our local emergency crew if you are going to use rescue activities or measures with the local fire crew or fire team. And the summary, confined space rescue summary, all the rescue service must have the following: be qualified, like I said, the appropriate PPE, and also be trained in the first aid and CPR. Of course, they are trained, always trained, and we have to make sure that also, if you are going to use internal rescue team, then they have to also make sure that also they retrained yearly, and they have to have a refresher training or renewal, and they have to practice the rescue activities. That's what I have for regarding confined space entry. Just for your brainstorming and also just to refresh you. I know the most of you involved in different confined space work, and you have more experience in the best practice also. Maybe like in the future you will share with us. Just to go through the question, I think there's one question from Dev. I was that's Nick, did you see the comments?
I do. That's correct.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that we need to we have to follow the training. Like I mentioned, also there's also requirement by the regulation in each country, or in any other country. Also, there's a requirement to make sure that confined space training workers had confined space training, and not only workers, and also like the supervisors, and we have to make sure also that we are tracking the training.
Okay, thank you.
Any question? Comment? Right. Thank you. And you'll find, I think,